Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today is episode 1 of a special 2-part episode that I'm doing this week with regular guest Dan Snow. We decided when they announced they were going to make our favorite book, The Stand, into a TV show, that we would do some podcasts about it. And so this is the first episode where we talk about our expectations for the show. We talk about the book and our love for that whole universe that Stephen King created back in the late 70s. And then this episode is out on this Wednesday. And then on Friday, you'll get episode 2, where we talk about the show after having watched it. So there's like a 2.5-month gap between the 2 episodes, but you're going to get them with like a 3-day gap. Dan is, of course, one of my favorite people, and he is a very popular guest. Anytime I have him on the show, you guys seem to really love listening to it, especially when we talk about Stephen King stuff. So if you are unaware of the Stephen King book, The Stand, or the CBS All Access series that was just wrapped up, that was the remaking of that, because they made this in the early 90s. They tried to. This was a little bit better than that one. So yeah, check it out. This episode will air this Wednesday. There'll be another one on Friday. And if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe and hit the bell to get updates on new episodes. Like and share, and please feel free to comment on this one in particular, because this is a story that a lot of people are familiar with. If you are listening to the podcast version of this show, which is getting a lot of downloads these days, thank you very much to my listeners. Please leave us a review. Share this with other people you think might like the podcast I got going. Our listenership is growing rapidly at the moment. We seem to have broken through some threshold in the algorithm. And I appreciate it. I keep putting them out every week. This week you get 2. In the description below, you will find all of our merch, pins, buttons, stickers, all that stuff. We have t-shirts through Warlord Clothing. If you're interested in the gear I use to make this show, you can find links to all that stuff down there as well. As you are aware, we now have a Patreon, and all the support we get for the show, whether it's a listen, a share, a like, a comment, or anything, is greatly appreciated. And the Patreon is just, another step up above that to help me keep making the show, which I very much appreciate all the support everybody gives me. And this is episode 1 of 2 parts for this week. So check out me and Dan Snow talking about the book and our expectations of the TV series, The Stand. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. Today's guest is Dan Snow, back in for a special 2-part episode of me and him talking about. First, we're going to talk about the book, The Stand, because if you've listened to Dan's episodes before, Stephen King is the common thread of both conversations, and The Stand. We can't be around each other without talking about that book. And so with we're recording this in 2 parts. So this first part is going to be me and Dan talking about the book specifically. And then probably a little bit about what our expectations for the upcoming CBS television series about that is the TV series of the book, The Stand. And then we're going to do that separate episode after we've watched it starts in December, and we're going to record this final a second episode in February to kind of go over. We're going to talk about what we want, and then right now, and then we're going to talk about what we got in February.
That's a good way to do it.
Hi, Dan. How are you? It's good to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. What else? This is a giant event in our lives. Me and you have been talking about how this, in what form this was going to come out. Because for a long time it was going to be movies like Lord of the Rings, AAA movie series, that was my vote. And then it was going to be an HBO series, which was almost as good an option. And then it ended up as a CBS All Access show, which made me more dubious.
Yes, we don't know what that actually means, so we'll see. Yeah.
At this point, all we know is from the trailers and the teasers and stuff.
Right.
And so we won't get too far down that road until the end, I think, of this episode, about what our expectations kind of based on what we've seen so far and the casting and stuff. Because I think when we recorded the last, the casting had just been announced, and yes, I was giving you information you didn't even have yet. So now we know, we know what's going on. So, so to the book, I swear to God, I have all my notes this time. So any information I need, I'm going to have. The book was written by Stephen King. It came out in 1978. And for people who aren't familiar with the book, The Stand, it's a dark fantasy novel about a pandemic that takes out about I don't know if I right. I don't remember. I don't know in the book if I can remember if they ever said what the actual percentage of humanity was wiped out by it, but I believe it was
like 97 something.
Yeah, it's like almost 100%. It's like there's like a total of like 50,000 people left, at least in the United States. We don't know about the rest of the world because they don't really talk too much about that. But so it's about a pandemic that wipes out, almost all of humanity, and about, and then there's a little supernatural in there with like these two different, there's a force of evil and a force of good. And then, all of the survivors are kind of drawn to one or the other camps. And, and that's kind of the basics of the story. And we have like this amazing, cast of characters from, most of them are on the good side, but there's some good characters definitely on the dark side as well.
Yeah.
How old were you when you first read it? Do you remember?
I mean, probably, I don't know. I think I might have got to it kind of late, like 16. Mm-hmm. It definitely wasn't one of the first ones I read because I remember thinking that it was just too long. And I was like, wow. It's
his longest book. It's like 1,300 pages, I think. The full version, because in 78, a version came out, and then in like 90, he put out.
I think it was 90. Yeah.
The version that he wanted, the uncut version, and it had one of the best characters in the book, who is the kid, who was cut out of the original one, and then most of the other stuff was just kind of. It is somewhat unnecessary, but I obviously do prefer the unabridged version.
Me too.
I think I was 78, I was 8, so I didn't read it when it was new, but I'm guessing probably by 81 or 82, probably when I was 11 or 12, I read it for the first time.
Jeez.
Yeah, right. I think I said on the last episode, and I've said before on the show, like my parents would just let us read whatever we wanted when we were kids because they were just happy that we were reading anything. And it's probably the best move my parents ever made because my reading comprehension was so advanced all through school just because I was reading adult books by the time I was like 10 years old. I think I read Jaws when I was like 10 or something.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah. I think I've read around the same time I read The Exorcist, which is even more terrifying and not age appropriate at all.
Yeah.
But again, my parents they had this massive wall of like a whole wall of books in our garage, and they were like, you could just read whatever you want. And it was like literally, there was 1,000 books at our fingertips, and they would take us to the library like every once a month as well, because then we could get more specific stuff like hockey books or whatever. But
That's awesome.
lots of reading.
Yeah. What was cool about this one for King was that the first, like what he had done prior to this was very small in scope. He did Carrie and The Shining and Salem's Lot, where I think the only things that really were before it that had come out. And then this one, he always said, I want it to be like a Lord of the Rings, U.S. version of Lord of the Rings. And it's just, I don't know, I just reread it and it moves. Like, it's still super tight. Like, it doesn't have a lot of extra stuff. I actually felt like it could even be longer, which is ridiculous, but yeah.
Yeah, you're right, because I've been listening to the audiobook. I've said this before also. I think when we talked before that I have every version of it. I have the abridged softback and hardback. I have the unabridged softback and hardback. I have the audiobook. I have the e-reader book, and I kind of constantly read the book. Like, if I'm going to read, I just pop that open and just start reading it. So I'm like perpetually reading that book. And the last year I had the audiobook on Audible is 47 hours long.
What the hell?
And so, when I'm making art and stuff, like I listen to podcasts, I listen to audiobooks, and like once a year I'll go all the way through that. And it'll take me a couple weeks to get through. And when I realized how close the TV series was and how we needed to get going on this, I was like, oh shit, I gotta start reading it. And or listening to it. And so we've been going crazy listening to it. And I think I got through about half of it. So it's mostly fresh. It's kind of always fresh in my mind, but you're right. The book is constant. It's like, because there's a core of characters that is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's probably 15 or 16 core characters on the good guy side. And so you're bouncing from from their story, like one, and we start with before the plague, we go into while the plague is happening, and then we go into what they do after the plague. And so it's like, or while the plague is happening and they're trying to get to where they're going. And so it's easy to keep moving because they're just going from one character to another, and they're all in high drama at all times, even before the plague.
Yeah, like I love how you go from character to character, and then he'll put in a chapter which is just like a general overview of how it spreads. Mm-hmm. Or my favorite chapter is like how all the people after the plague went through who died for other reasons, like they fell into a well, or something happened and something hit them on the head, or they fell off their bike, and it's like, so you get those random chapters put in, and then you'll also just get a Randall Flagg chapter or a Trash Can Man chapter, and it's just like, you just keep going. You're just flipping pages like crazy. Yeah, it's so well laid out. And I was always like, at least in my adult life, Insomnia was always my favorite book, or at least that's what I said. Mm-hmm. But now as I was just going through The Stand again, I'm like, it's not even close. Like it's so far and away the best thing he's ever written that it's not close. Yeah.
Yeah. Insomnia is definitely in my top probably 3 or 4 books of his for sure. For sure. Yeah. I really like Needful Things a lot too.
Yes.
But yeah, I wrote down like some notes of like my favorite bits, and for sure one of the best parts of the book is the people who died of the plague that never got sick. The guy who's a jogger who has a heart attack while he's out jogging because that's his only coping mechanism for his family dying, or like you said, like the little 5-year-old kid who falls down a well, when he's out picking blackberries because his parents are dead, he doesn't know what to do with himself. That whole part, and
I'm not laughing.
No, it's okay. You can laugh. It's not a real person.
It's so good though,
and it's great because some of them are just like a couple sentences, and some of them are a few paragraphs, and it's so he really takes you on a ride of all the possibilities in a way that if I was writing it, it wouldn't occur to me to do that in the first place. And then it wouldn't occur to me to make all of them so different, because it really makes it seem like, well, this person was like a loss, and then this person was not a loss at all, and they probably shouldn't even have survived in the first place. It's like,
right. Good people, bad people, like it just happens.
Yeah, there's like that. Yeah, and you're right. And the part, like the other part that is kind of random characters is like the government officials, the military, and like them being in like surveying the laboratory where the virus had gotten out of, and and they have to, they're looking at it on computer monitors, like, oh, that like everybody in there's dead, and like, and their reaction and how their jobs are affected and their lives are affected by, things that had nothing to do with them, and there's a lot. Yeah. Like, it just in general, it's such a deep story. Like, he goes really deep in every aspect, from characters to side stories. Like, everything's super deep in that book, and it's so rich, and it's like it's its own universe.
And like even like a character like Tom Cullen, where he can go into this thing, and Tom is like an on the spectrum person, and he can go into like how Tom thinks and solves problems, and you get it. You're like, wait, like I totally understand that, like how Tom goes quiet and in his brain he's trying to like put combinations together and do stuff. Like that's high level stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy, that stuff. And like, one of the characters is deaf and mute, and there's a lot of stuff about, I mean, he's kind of really the hero. I don't know, I guess Stu's the hero, but and just spoiler alert.
Well, I mean, at this point, like, I don't know if you should be listening to this if you haven't read the book. So go ahead.
Yeah. If you've gotten this far, it's too late for you now.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that it is like one of the most read books in American history. It is probably his most popular book, and that would make it definitely in the running for one of the most read books ever. They made a really, really unwatchably bad miniseries of it in the early 90s, like 90, 91, 92, somewhere in that early. And it's unwatchably bad. There was a couple of wins, like the casting of Gary Sinise as Stu Redman, I thought was a win.
He was good.
But it thinned out. It thinned out pretty quick right after that. And I remember like watching it and just like, I think I was really forgiving at the time, like angry about certain things, but forgiving because The Stand is my favorite story of all time ever told by anyone ever. And it really is a set in modern America version of Lord of the Rings. It's a major saga.
Yeah, and if you contrast those two feelings of like watching the miniseries, and I was like, oh, all right. But then like when I went and saw Lord of the Rings, the first movie in the movie theater, a billion years later, and it was awesome. You were like, this is great. Like, okay, you can do this. Like somebody can figure this out. And there's CGI now and visual effects and money to make this happen. So that's why, you and I are always so mad about the Dark Tower, because there's ways to do that as well. But, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, you're definitely more mad about that than I am, because I couldn't stay with the book series. I read the first few and I really liked them, and then I just couldn't stay with it.
Yeah. It's all connected, man.
As we've learned over the years is that every one of his books was somehow connected to a general universe, which is amazing.
To a point, because the more I think about it, like, I don't know how much of that we're putting on to him and giving him credit for maybe something that, I don't know, like when you look at the character of Randall Flagg and how he kind of changes and does stuff from book series to book series, it's like, yes, there are legitimate connections, but then a lot of times maybe we're putting too much meaning onto it. Sort of like, how like when we were watching the end of True Detective and everyone's like, this is going to be the best thing in the world. And then it was like, just okay. And you're like, okay, well, all right, I'm still happy about it, but it didn't hit that level. So I think some of the connections get a little overblown, but I think that's my own like personal view on it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but there's things like, you know, when you're watching The Outsider on HBO, and that evil entity is the same evil entity from the what is it? Desperation, and then apparently it's the same one from It. And it's like, so there's a lot of that core stuff, and Castle Rock did a good job of kind of helping to pull that together. And unfortunately, I heard that Castle Rock's been canceled.
As the same thing with Outsider season 2.
That got canceled too?
Canceled. Uh-huh.
Oh, that's not good. I was excited that Outsider season 2 was even going to happen, because I didn't even like, I was always assuming that it was just a one-off. And then I was like,
there was a short, in his last book, If It Bleeds, I think it was called. There's a story in that they were going to use that for Outsider season 2, and it was pretty good, but it was more of the same type of stuff, you know, same girl and same like, you know, supernatural monsters and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Outsider was really good.
It was cool. Yeah, I liked it.
Outsider was really, really good. So with The Stand, to get back on that. So I think, you know, there was a couple of places in that book that that were standouts for sure. Is Stu trying to get himself out of the plague center in Stovington, Vermont, after everyone is dead and he's the only one there, and he has to like get out of a dead building full of dead people, is terrifying. Even as an adult, it's terrifying. Christy has never read the book, and so we have been, for the last like 4 days, we've been completely tearing the entire art studio apart, cleaning everything, reorganizing, and so I've had the book on while we're doing that, and she's sitting there and she's like, "This is really intense," and I was like, "Yeah, it is very. Yeah, I told you." And then like also along the same level of terror is Larry trying to go through the Lincoln Tunnel out of Manhattan into New Jersey when it's packed full of cars full of dead people and pitch black, and just trying to imagine how scary that would be. Even as a person, like I'm a person, I am not superstitious at all, and I don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural or any of that. And it would still be hard to get through a pitch black 1.5 miles of dead people in cars.
Of dead bodies. Yeah, absolutely.
That would be rough. Yeah, there's several scenes like that where like people are put in very, you know, and from the dark side, you know, Lloyd Henry being trapped in a jail cell and everybody in the prison is dead except for him, and he's starving to death.
That was the one that got me recently. Like his whole thing, and like with the body in the next cell, that was what I thought was as I was reading it, I was like, this is King like at his most scary. Like this is gnarly, and it was it's disgusting and pretty intense.
Yes, it's very intense. You can like feel like the way Stephen King writes it is you can feel how desperate and scared he is to be like, oh my God, I'm totally going to starve to death in this. And like,
totally going to eat this guy.
Yeah. Eat whatever I can.
Right.
And there's a bunch of scenes like that where before you get to any light, there's a lot of darkness, even for the good guys in this. And, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing how they pull that off in the TV show for sure. And then one of the other things that is of note to me, and it kind of ends up being like a weird kind of also real life to like allegory to today's political environment, is that
Yeah.
Even the people that you think are on the bad side, like when they all convene and are setting up their society, they're all very likable people. Like they aren't monsters. You know what I mean? They're just regular people. And I think that if the pandemic is a little bit of a mirror of current society, which is insane considering it was written 40 years ago, the politics of both the good group and the bad group are also a very good correlation to American society right now, where nobody is a bad guy, really. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's just normal people, and you've taken up with the side you've taken up with, and and you're just doing your job at some level to live in the society that you're living in, the group of people that you've decided to live in. And I thought that was also a weird coincidence to like modern life.
We just hit our third sort of lockdown in Los Angeles, where now they're closing restaurants and stuff, and it's like you see how different people react from all sides of the spectrum, But yeah, like I think you had mentioned this when we talked before, like what you see in the trailer for the new TV show is not the Vegas, at least in the quick shots, is not the Vegas of the book. Like the Vegas of the book is all business and nobody's partying, and it's kind of like everyone's towing the line and just sort of doing things, and everyone's scared. No one's like celebrating.
Yeah, because the guy running the show in Vegas is like, if you get caught drinking or doing drugs, you're dead. And they're like crucifying people on, telephone poles in the streets of Vegas as an example. And that was like, that was one of the things when me and you, because, we've been like messaging back and forth about this as more materials come out. And that was one of my first things is I was like, I'm already skeptical because they've already fucked that up, and that's like a really easy thing to get right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, I guess we'll just start talking about issues with the show, potential issues with the show.
Right.
They changed Judge Ferris into a woman, and I don't have any problem with that. Just as a hardcore fan, I'm like, I don't know why they needed to do that.
Right.
It doesn't ruin anything. It doesn't break anything at all. But when they're showing me teaser stuff and we see the four that,
well, it's Ray. They changed Ray. Ray's a woman.
Oh, I thought they changed the judge. Ray.
No, it's Ray who's played, I wrote it down, who's played by Irene Bedard.
Okay.
Yeah, so they gender swapped her. Yeah. So it's still Ray going on the trip. Yeah, there's a couple things like that.
Right. So the four is Stu and Glenn and Larry
and Ray. Yeah.
Ray what? What's Ray's last name? Ray
Brentner.
Ralph
Ray
Brentner.
Yeah.
Ralph
so
Brentner
they changed it from Ralph to Ray.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. For some reason I thought it was a judge, and I was like, I don't know why you need to change that character.
Wait, no, the judge is somebody. I forget who it was. I didn't look it up for the him. But yeah, the judge is somebody.
I think they may have made the judge a woman too, like a white lady, if I remember correctly. It's like the only thing I don't have because it's TV show related, and in my notes I just kind of kept things book related. But to kind of touch on the casting, we started touching on it 6 months ago when we did the other episode. I'm pretty good with the casting. I'm not a huge Whoopi Goldberg fan, just in general. She seems a little goofy
think she'll be good
for that. But she seems to be doing okay in the trailers that I've seen and stuff. She seems okay.
Yeah.
But the rest of the casting, seemed pretty good. I was pretty happy with the, Amber Heard as Nadine Cross, and
that's going to be great.
Yeah.
And then, I think Greg Kinnear as Glenn is going to be fantastic. That's A+. Yeah.
That was one of the good castings from the original show, was to get My Favorite Martian. I can't remember that guy's name in real life. But he played Glenn in the first miniseries. But yeah, Kinnear is perfect for that role. I'm not super excited about Marsden as Stu because I think he's just kind of too handsome. As a matter of fact, in the audiobook, Stephen King, there's a preamble and a bunch of notes. And Stephen King said if he had his way and could cast anybody, he would cast Bruce Springsteen. And I thought that was kind of a perfect.
That's interesting.
He's rugged enough. There's not, for me, James Marsden is not a small town East Texas ruggedly handsome dude. He's like a male model. You know what I mean? Yep. It's like, which is, he's a good actor and I think he'll be fine.
Yeah.
But so, it's like little things like that cause me concern. You know what I mean? It's like, if they didn't really finesse it to that level, are they really gonna be? And then at this point, I'm pretty sure that everything I've read casting wise, I can live with. The only
I don't think there's any big mistakes. I mean, who knows? But
no, there was nothing that stands out. I mean, they made Larry into a younger African American kid, which is perfect. He could have definitely been that in the book for sure. And I think that ends up working out really well, actually.
Right.
Because he's a musician and he has a song that's just become a hit when the outbreak happens. Like he literally gets his big break the week that the entire world dies.
I hope they do that party. That party was great.
Yes.
Like the Malibu beach party. Like that's super fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is the lever that moves him to the East Coast. So I think they kind of have to.
Yeah.
That's the thing about one of the things about I think it's 13 episodes.
It's not. It's 9.
It's 9?
It's 9 1 hours. I know.
It needed to be 13 hour and a halves.
I mean, maybe.
Even if they gave it 13 1 hours would have been okay. But I mean, you can't tell that story in that amount of time. I don't think you can tell it right. But I do hope that they do a good job of setting the background stories for all of the major characters, because it's half the book.
I read somewhere that it's going to be, they're going to start in the middle and then do flashbacks. But who knows? So are you up to date on all the Marilyn Manson stuff?
Yeah, I did get up to date on that. And I think they did that on purpose. I think they let the rumor that he was the trash can man. I think they let that go to hide. I don't know why they'd hide Ezra Miller as the trash can man. Right. Like that's a thing that matters. Right. Yeah. Like there was, like he was listed in the cast on IMDb the entire time. And so the rumor just persisted that he was playing the character, the trash can man, who is on the bad guy side, who is a firebug, who goes around after the death of the world, like setting everything on fire. I think
that, like for me, Trash Can Man is Gollum.
Yes.
And so he's there for a reason, and he's there at the end to cause some trouble. And I think that character could totally steal the show in a TV show. And that's why I was excited. I was like, okay, Marilyn Manson, that's cool. But then did you see that they also were talking to him about being the kid? And they could have made this up too, where they were like, okay, no, Marilyn Manson, we were talking about him being the kid, but then we realized that it didn't have a place in the show, just like the first time they did the miniseries. And it's like, okay, is that really true or what? And then they said Marilyn Manson recorded a version of The End by The Doors, but they couldn't afford to clear it. So it's like you can't afford to clear it, but in your trailer, you've got Bob Marley, which has to be on par, I would think, with clearance. Like it's Bob Marley's voice too. Like, so I don't know. There's a lot of something weird's going on with all of that, and who knows? But I think it would have been great to see him as the kid too.
Yeah, for people unfamiliar, there is an additional in the unabridged version. There is an addition of like an entire chapter of a character called the Kid, who's like this hot rodding Louisiana Cajun kind of rockabilly
cowboy
dude, who picks up the trash can man and like helps him move towards the West.
Right.
And
he has a great death. Like his death is one of the best ones in the book. Like with the wolves.
It's super crucial. It ends up being crucial to the story once you've read it. When it was not in the abridged version, you just know that Trash Can Man is an important person to Randall Flagg, who is the bad guy.
Right.
And then in the unabridged version, the chapter with the kid, it becomes extremely clear that Trash Can Man is the important person to Randall Flagg.
And what the kid does to him sort of affects Trash Can Man for the rest. It affects his character and makes him more off the rails, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think, all of the abuse, like whether it was physical abuse or whether it was keeping him in a constant terror. I think it snapped whatever was left connected in his brain for sure. Yeah. And I guess if they're only doing 9 1-hour episodes, I'm okay with the kid not being in there. That's time that needs to be taken up by more important things, in my opinion. And it's weird that you say that they're gonna start in the middle and do flashbacks because, like I said, like half of the book is about getting to the middle. And and then everything goes real fast once everybody's are kind of gathered together. Actually, more than half the book is everybody getting, like, another spoiler alert. Half the bad people go to Vegas, and the good people go to Boulder, Colorado, and set up like all of the good people are drawn to Boulder through a dream, and so. They kind of all collect there, and they start rebuilding society from Boulder, Colorado. And it takes, 3/4 of the book for everybody to get to Colorado. And so for that to end up being the flashbacks.
I hope I'm wrong. That's just something that I read. Yeah.
The final, because the final showdown's like a chapter, and I was, where I was going when we kind of started down this was that it has been revealed that Stephen King and his son wrote a new final chapter and ending for everything.
Let's talk about the ending for a second, because I don't like it that much.
The real ending?
Yeah, the real ending.
What was it you didn't like about it?
I didn't like this ball of energy that Flagg manifests, and then this thing is like in the air and then it cruises over to the bomb and blows it up. Like, whatever. Like, here's what I want to see. I want to see the Trash Can Man wheel the bomb into the area where everyone is, and I want him to blow it up himself because he can't help himself, because he's realizing, this is what I want to see in the TV show, that he realizes that he's going to die, and the last thing he wants to do is go up in a nuclear bomb.
Right.
And so forget about whatever, like, Flagg shouldn't really have anything to do with it. He should just bolt right when he realizes what's going to happen. But I want Trash Can Man to be the one to just do it all on his own. That's my wish for the series. Mark it down.
Okay. Everybody listening. No, Dan Snow.
That's what I want.
That's Dan Snow's what. And if we're talking about the original ending, that's Stephen King. Sometimes you get a ball of energy. Sometimes that's your Stephen King ending. Is a weird ball of energy.
That's right.
For a long time, it was like a giant spider monster. It was going to end in a giant spider monster. For a long time, and I would there was a couple times where I was like annoyed. Like, I don't get annoyed with Stephen King stuff very often because he's just I'm such a huge fan. And even if he takes me on a 1,000-page journey and ends it with the spider monster, I'm still okay because all of the 900 pages before that were the best thing I've ever read in my life. But he'll do that to you. He'll cheap out on you in the end.
So, but you're right. He's writing a new ending, and in the end of the book, Stu and Franny go back to Castle. They mention Castle Rock in the book. So maybe there's like, they say she rattles off like a few towns that she wants to visit, and Castle Rock is one of them. So in theory, they can go back to Maine at the end of the story and then run into anything. Like they could run into Pennywise, they could all kinds of stuff, like whatever. I mean, because as you know,
they
Stephen
better
King,
not
like,
do something like that.
he's getting more and more inclusive with the crazy ideas. And if you finished The Dark Tower, you would have known this. But he's kind of like, he'll take a chance and do whatever. So who knows? Like, I'm curious to see if he's going to also change like the actual ending scene, which I don't think he will, but who knows?
I mean, if he wanted to clean that up and do something different with it, I think I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it all remains to be seen. But yeah, like one of the, going back to the Marilyn Manson kind of, the fact that they were a little bit dodgy with, is that the Trash Can Man appears to be like a goth kid. And so there's like one scene in the trailer where he's on top of these gas tanks in gas storage in the middle of the country, Iowa or Indiana or something. And you can see him on the top, and he looks like Marilyn Manson. He's wearing like the total Marilyn Manson getup.
That is not an accident.
Yeah, it's not at all. They were like, we're going to get everybody to think it's Marilyn Manson. And then it ends up not being. But I do, and that kind of touches on a bigger thing. And I understand why they did it. But they modernize it. It happens in the 2010s instead of in the early 90s, like the book did. Book came out in 78, but it was set in the early 90s. And like 1990, if I remember correctly.
I think so, yeah.
And so I feel like it would have been more interesting if they'd kept that. If they'd have kept it in 1990 instead of making it a current, because I guess from a production standpoint, it's just way easier to keep people in modern clothes and modern cars, and they can be in Manhattan and not have to worry about dressing it to look like 90s Manhattan. So I guess I get that, but like Trash Can Man's not a goth kid, like he wasn't. That wasn't a thing in 1978 when Stephen King wrote the book. Although I will say one of the things I did notice this time listening to the audiobook that I more so than I ever realized before is how outdated his references were to, I mean, of course in 78 he couldn't have known what 1990 would look like, but there's things he's talking about in 1990 that are still like, in particular, when he's talking about Larry's music career, it's supposed to be taking place in the 90s, but Larry's entire back catalog of music history is like, he's in like a boogie blues band, and and like and like they're it was just like shit that it was like Larry was in the Doobie Brothers or something.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, dude, it's 1990, man. Like like Larry's not, if he was 40, that would have been his backstory, but that isn't his backstory, man. So there was stuff like that where like, things were a little out of context but again, like Stephen King couldn't have known in 1978 what 1990 would look like. So, he's forgiven.
Right.
But like with the new, it's like, it's clearly current.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have so many like traffic jams of cars and dead bodies. And it's like to not deal with the wardrobe and the old cars. That's just money. That's gotta be budget. Yeah.
I'm really hoping that all the cellular networks and internet goes down so nobody can talk to anybody via their phone or computer, because that wasn't a thing that existed back then either. Yeah. And it would, like, if we had a pandemic now and all of our phone service still worked for 8 weeks, it wouldn't be a very compelling story of the rebuilding of humanity. We'd all just have it if somebody build a website and it'd be over.
Right. No, but I've seen pictures of like Harold, writing the writing on the barn or whatever. Like, I think that's in the new TV series. So I think all the technology is gone. Yeah, so that should be good. Okay, I think his character should be great. Like, his character might really kind of shine as well. Like, he's going to be really good journey. I don't know who the guy is.
I cannot remember his name offhand, but he's fantastic.
He's Owen Teague.
Yeah.
And I wrote down that he was a friend of Henry Bowers in the It movie. He was the guy with the spray paint can and the torch. So he's good.
Yes, and he was also in HBO miniseries called Miss Fletcher that was out this last year. And he was one of the stars of it. And he was fantastic. And when he was one of the first people I saw cast, and I was like, oh, he's really good for Harold. If you remove the context of Harold being an overweight kid.
Right.
This kid
is thin. Yeah.
Couldn't be more thin. And and to kind of harken back to the complete garbage that the original miniseries was. Boy. They got Corin Nemec, who from what was it? Parker
Major
Lewis
League.
Can't Lose. Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
Oh, right, that's him.
I'm thinking to play Harold, and they put him in the worst fat suit that has ever existed. It looked like they put pillows under his shirt. And I remember at the time, I was like, he doesn't look fat. He looks like a kid with pillows under his shirt. And so this time it looks like they're just going to remove that Harold's a fat kid nobody likes angle and just make him a weird kid nobody likes.
Yeah, he's just going to be
totally
creepy,
fine. I think he's just going to be like a nerd, like a computer nerd kind of like gamer kid who has no social graces. Because in 1978, there was no computer nerds. I mean, in the book, he was a fat kid who wanted to be a writer. And, I think, in 2010, it's more likely that he's a skinny kid who has no friends. He's more of an incel than he is like a nerdy writer kid. And so, yes, Harold is in very important character to the story because he's one of the few characters that rides the line between the good guys and the bad guys. There's like two characters that ride the line between good guys and bad guys. And also too, and I think that we talked about this on the last podcast about when we talked about the Stand horrible miniseries was that they put the Nadine Cross and
they combined them, yeah.
And what was her?
Was it Nadine and Rita?
Yes, it was. They combined Nadine and Rita. Who? No, you don't. It was different. Nadine was a way important character, and Rita, who's being played by Heather Graham this go around, which is fine.
Fantastic. And I'm assuming that's
literally perfect casting for that character as described by Stephen King in the book. It's
that's
like
right.
a 50-year-old, a really attractive 50-year-old woman who is like a socialite and has never struggled at all and finds herself alone in Manhattan around a bunch of dead people. I mean, Heather, he couldn't have done better there.
And I feel like she'll be the end of episode 1, and that'll be the last we see of her.
Yeah. Well, she's important
Spoiler
to Larry's.
alert.
She's very important to Larry's story arc,
right?
Because he kind of, if the kid set Trash Can Man on his final path, then Rita sent Larry on his final path. But yeah, I mean, again, like the casting for the show seems to be pretty good.
I feel like the Flag upgrade will be massive.
The Randall Flagg casting upgrade?
Yep. I think Skarsgård is great.
Yeah.
He's going to be great. He might be a little bit too much like Cyrus from the Warriors, like at least based on what we've seen.
Yeah. But he is a very big personality in the book. Like there's a lot of wild behavior from him.
Right.
It's just that they just got it so wrong in the 90s miniseries. So totally wrong that first of all, they cast somebody who wasn't a particularly known actor.
Yeah, he wasn't very good.
And he wasn't very good. And Alexander Skarsgård is very, very good.
Absolutely.
And I do like that Stephen King stuff casts the Skarsgårds a lot these
They're everywhere,
days.
yeah.
Yeah. Him and that family seem to have bonded a serious relationship.
Right.
But yeah, I think when I saw that, because when they were talking about doing the movies, it was going to be Matthew McConaughey, who was, I mean, you couldn't pick a better Randall Flagg than him. Like if you made him the character from True Detective, I mean, that there's Randall Flagg. It's like
totally.
That older version of him, that kind of salty. That's like, but he's a little more smoldery, I think, than Randall Flagg is in the book. In the book, Randall's a much bigger personality. I think Alexander Skarsgård's a good. I agree. He looks the type, and I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, but like Flagg isn't like a megalomaniac. Like he's an agent of chaos. So he loves chaos. And I love the parts in the book where Flagg kind of realizes that shit's going wrong. And he's like, why is it going wrong? Like, what's happening? And it bothers him, but he's like, but he can't help it, So he just, and then, that's why he kind of takes off. But it's like, I hope they don't make Skarsgård just like this one note, like power hungry, evil bad guy. Because that's really not the thing.
Yeah, for sure. Because that is one of the things about the book. Flagg in the book is that, for a good long while, and the same thing with the Mother Abigail character, for a good long time, they make you believe that these are invincible forces. Right. Both of them are like untouchable, invincible forces. And then once they the core mission is in place and they're getting to the point where they have to implement all of it, shit starts going wrong for both.
They get wobbly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, they both totally do. And you don't see that coming with the Randall Flagg one, which was a nice, I don't think it was a revolutionary plot device by Stephen King to make him vulnerable so you could see where he was going to start to crumble. But it was good when you're reading it to be like, I think what Randall Flagg refers to it as is shit's getting flaky around the edges.
Yes. Yeah. And it sets him up for the Trash Can Man ending.
Because he doesn't see it coming. Yeah,
he doesn't see it coming.
Yeah. Because he didn't see Dana Jurgens coming.
Right.
And again, like I didn't put the castings down on my cheat sheet because I didn't know how much we were going to talk about the casting of the TV show and stuff. But I seem to remember that the casting for Dana Jurgens was really good, and for Julie Lowry, who is kind of like another agent of chaos, like kind of.
She's a troublemaker.
She might be the second most damaging character in the entire story, like by just being petulant, you know what I mean? Like she's an abject. If it's supposed to be the Lord of the Rings, it's also got a little Willy Wonka in there, and she is absolutely Veruca Salt.
That's great. That's a good one.
Yeah. She can't get what she wants, and she makes shit rough for everybody. Yeah, and that was in the book. She was a character that I didn't see coming back. You know what I mean? Like,
she ended up in Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah. Like she causes a bunch of problems, and you don't see her coming back. And then when she does come back, she really, really causes problems. Mm-hmm. I'm curious. They definitely diversified all of the. Again, the book came out in 1978. Everybody's white except for, and Stephen King for a very long time, he did have a problem with the magical Negro, which is a thing in American culture where there's always some magic black guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of his stories up through the 80s had the magical black guy in there. And this time it happens to be a magical black woman. But everybody else in that book is white. You know what I mean? And so I'm totally cool with them diversifying it like that. Like the little kid Joe is Asian. And, like I think, Larry's a black guy. And, Nadine's a white woman. So now we have a family that's, like a little mini family that's, 3 different cultures. And so I'm not one of those people who bemoans that kind of thing. Like, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. It wasn't done in a way that's like, that it breaks anything,
Right.
Like sometimes they do that kind of stuff and it just breaks. It just breaks because it was done for the sake of it. No,
I think it'll be great. I think the changes they made are good. And
yeah,
I think maybe also one of the good parts about the Stand, the book, is that Stephen King doesn't write dialect in it. Like, he's got some books where he's writing like African-American dialect. It's like awful. It's awful.
Yes.
It's the worst.
It's
like, don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, different time. It was a different time.
Yeah.
The 1970s were a very different time. He did do that a little bit in the book with Flag. Flag does a little bit of a zippity doo dah stuff, every now and then when and I think it's, in this case, I think it was to kind of make him seem a little bit more offensive.
Yeah.
I think it was to make him look like he was constantly mocking everything. Because it was, there's a little bit of inspiration in the chapter where Stephen King, in the book, where he introduces and describes Randall Flagg. It's almost like Sympathy for the Devil, where, he's like, he was kind of around throughout history.
Right.
When
he's seen all this stuff.
The bad shit happened.
Yeah.
When Patty Hearst was, kidnapped by the SLA, and when, like a lot, like he was involved, he was there when the Kent State riots and murders happened, and, all 70s stuff.
But Flagg is probably King's favorite character. Well, he shows up everywhere.
He does show up everywhere. As a kid, he was very frightening for me reading it as young as I did. He was a very scary character. I think in his other iterations in the King universe, he's way less scary. And I don't know if that's an age thing or if it was Stephen King writing him. Because like in the Gunslinger series, he's not like scary. He's just...
No, he's kind of a goofball towards the end, yeah.
Yeah, he's just more of like... he's just the resistance. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
he's just in the Stand,
counterbalance. In the Stand, he's the bad guy.
Yeah, he's everything that's about the American knight that scares people.
Right.
And he, so he's the boots on the pavement and like sliding off the road, and when the car drives by and the kids are asleep and they have a bad dream, like all that shit. Like, it's great. Every time he writes about him, it's the most descriptive stuff that he's done. When he talks about bad vibes. Yeah, he is the
bad vibes. He's a literal bad vibe manifest in one of the for sure one of the other parts. I got a little off track. When I was writing down things about parts of the book that I was hoping that would end up, that were things that I really, really loved, was the journey back to Boulder with Stu and Tom in the wintertime. And
Kojak.
Yeah, and Kojak. That's right, Kojak the dog. I always forget about Kojak. And then he shows up in the audio book or whatever, and I'm like, oh, that's right, there's a cool dog in this. Who isn't happy about that? Right. Yeah, that journey back where Stu and Tom have to travel in totally unsafe winter conditions over the Rocky Mountains is, driving over the Rocky Mountains in the summertime in a car is
right.
Intense. Like in snow, in the wintertime, the snowmobiles would be, that would be something else.
Yeah, but it's going to be hard to do in a TV show because the ending kind of has happened. The bomb's gone off. So now you've got Tom and Stu. Like, how long are you going to sort of hang out with them until they get back to Boulder? Like, everyone knows they're going to get back. So I'm sure it's going to be like a couple minutes of like, maybe when Stu sets up the movie theater or something, like that'll be a good scene.
I'm sure they'll do like some kind of montage.
That's a good one.
It's like a montage of them, Christmas and how. So you get an idea of how long it takes them to get that mission done.
Yeah, you can almost see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to put major league warnings about do not listen to this if you haven't watched the TV show yet. But again, yeah, like as far as the book's concerned, it came out in 1978. If you haven't read it,
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to have no. This is one that people should not listen to unless they've read it because it'll be robbing them of a great experience.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I always get from you when we're talking about anything in general, but specifically Stephen King related stuff, is you always give me a sense of optimism in ways where I may have been having rough expectations or experiences, because you totally turned me on Dr. Sleep. I didn't care for it, and then I went back and rewatched it after me and you talked, and I absolutely loved it.
Awesome.
The second time, you changed my headspace about it, and I feel like in this case you are way more optimistic about the TV series than I have been. We've been, like I said, we've been chatting, and I've been like, I don't know, and you're like, no, dude, it's gonna be okay. I think it's gonna all be okay, and I'm hoping that's how it all ends up in the end.
Remember, like wanting something to be good goes a long way in like helping it be good. So we're all looking for something.
That's very true. That's very true. But
listen, I think it's safe to say, if you roll out the actors in this miniseries from 1 through 50, they're all going to be so much better, on average, certain things than the original miniseries. Like everyone in this show is going to be good. So I don't know, like that's a good place to start. Visual effects are better. People know how to do television now. Like it's kind of hard to go off the rails, but it can happen. So I don't know. I'm optimistic that it'll at least be good.
In regards to that a little bit, do you know if CBS All Access, because it's a pay service, can they get a little bit rougher than regular?
I don't know.
CBS, like, I'm wondering if they can be a little more harsh, because you couldn't do a good job of telling this story on national TV, at 9 o'clock at night. You could not do it. It was like that James Brown documentary that they made, Get On Up. Like you can't make a family movie out of James Brown, and they did, and that's why it wasn't that great. You can't make a family series out of this. And so I'm hoping that the fact that they put it on CBS All Access means that they can go darker and heavier places than they would be able to otherwise.
I would assume so, over just CBS. But it was like, so I signed up for CBS All Access, and I brought it up on my TV, and I started clicking around, and there's nothing I want to watch. So that's not a good sign. It's like, I don't like Star Trek. I've seen all the Twilight Zones. What are we doing? Like, what is this?
Did you watch the new Twilight Zones? The Jordan
I've seen a
Peele
couple of them.
ones?
They're pretty good. Yeah, they're good.
Because those are on there. Right?
Yeah, I should watch the rest of those.
I'm only signing up for this for CBS All Access for The Stand. Yeah. But while I have it, I will absolutely watch the Twilight Zones, because I like anything that Jordan Peele does. Like he's. But
yeah, I would assume that there's going to be a little bit of swearing. There'll be more violence than you could put on network television.
There has to be. There's a lot of death. The entire book is death. from the smallest rat in a garbage can all the way up to half of, almost all of humanity.
The whole world.
So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm hoping for the best. Part of the problem, and I completely understand this, is that it is being my favorite story of all time told by anybody. There's no way they could make what's inside of my head from all of the years of reading that book and listening to the audiobook and being immersed. I have my own movie inside of here of what it's supposed to be. And that's why I was kind of hoping it would be the movies or the TV series, because I feel like it needs to look a lot more like The Outsider in feel and content than I think what you can really pull off on a channel like CBS, even if it's all access. So I was extremely excited when they were talking about it being an HBO series, because you could do a few seasons of it, you know, like you could do 3 seasons of 13 episodes, 10 hours long, and tell the entire story.
I don't know, like, it's a freaking drag. Like, would you want, I don't know if I want to watch 3 seasons of The Stand. Like, it's a lot of dread.
I totally would.
It's a bummer. No, I think like 10, I felt like 10 episodes can do it. 9, I don't know, but whatever. Like,
even if they did a 13 miniseries on HBO, I think would have probably been okay. And just left it at that.
I am optimistic. I always just sort of think like, well, the Lord of the Rings movies were good, so this could be good. This could happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would say that that's what I'm using as my scope to figure out if I think it's going to be okay.
That's not an even playing field?
Not
CBS Access, all the money in the world? Like, okay.
Nope.
I get
it. No, that's not... that is not even the same sport. And it's not the same league. It's not the same sport. Are you gonna? Is Fletcher gonna watch it?
Are you
gonna let him watch it?
Well, I'll know after 1 episode. I don't want him to watch it. I want him to read the book first.
Oh, fair enough.
He's 11.
Yeah, it's probably about how old I was when I read the book.
Yeah.
It didn't ruin me.
But
he should definitely read the book first, because there will be no going backwards. There's no two ways about that. You will never be able to go from the show to the book without being disappointed.
You can't unsee stuff. And even when I was reading it through this time, I saw Marsden, and so it was like, okay, it affects your brain.
So did I.
Yeah.
And it's funny, because the thing is that before the original miniseries, I had in my mind what Stu Redman looked like, and then every reading or listening since, it's always been Gary Sinise to me. And Franny has always been Molly Ringwald, and so I can't remember the name of the girl who plays Franny. It's Odessa something but she looks perfect.
I mean, Odessa Young. Yeah, she looks great.
Yeah. She looks really good. But again, it's like, Molly Ringwald is like, that's the mental picture I have of Franny Goldsmith.
Right.
So if there was anything that the original book got, or the original miniseries got right, was some of the casting, put those people in. The guy who played Glenn Bateman will always kind of be Glenn Bateman, etc. Thank God.
Maybe it'll change. Maybe this new series will change your mind. You'll get new people.
You know what? They already did a really good job with Rita Blakemore. She will forever.
And
now
I'm excited for
Graham.
I think the Tom and Nick episode, or whatever it'll be, like their travels. I think that'll be really good too. I think that's going to be a big upgrade.
I really like that they cast completely different for Tom this time than they did last time. Because that guy is a really good actor. He was really good. Anybody who has seen Orange Is the New Black, he played like the bad guy guard that was in the last couple seasons, whose name isn't coming to me.
Brad William Henke.
Yeah, I can't remember his character's name in Orange Is the New Black, but yeah, he's the big bearded guard from, and he plays like a guy who's mentally challenged, what'd you say? He's on the
spectrum, I guess. Yeah. But when I read the book, he's not a big guy, but in the miniseries, I think it will work. I think that actor's amazing, so I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it's a little bit of Mice and Men. I think maybe they were trying to tap into that a little bit. I was okay with the guy that they cast for Nick Andros. He seems like he's going to be good.
Yeah, he looks good.
It was like a weird fuss that they didn't cast an actual deaf guy, but that stuff always it's like, okay, whatever.
I don't know. Take the best
like
actor.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm going to try to accept it for what it is. How's that? And because I know it cannot live up to the story in my mind or the actual book. So I'm going to try to love it and appreciate it for what it is. Unless they do anything super egregious with that rewrite of the ending.
We could come back and be like, ah!
Me and Dan have been talking, since the last 6 months. It's been like messaging back and forth, like, did you see this thing? Did you see that thing? And we're like, I don't know if it's going to be like, I don't. And I was like, well, we got to do a 2-part podcast about it. And he's like, but what if it sucks? Like, and we don't want to talk about it. And I was like, I don't know. Let's just go for it.
We'll find enough for sure. Yeah. There'll be good stuff to talk about.
Even if we come back in February and just hammer it because it was so bad. That's a thing. Because I mean, if we wanted to, we could definitely sit here and talk for an hour about how terrible that first miniseries was.
Right. That's a long time ago.
Me and Christy tried. She was like, after listening to the episodes where we talked about it, she was like, well, I don't want to read the book because she never reads fiction. She only reads nonfiction for whatever reason. Right. She just can't get into stories that aren't real. And so she's like, well, you guys said that there was like a miniseries. Can we watch it? And I was like, I don't think you want to, but I guess we could. And I found it, and like literally, like we got through like 15 or 20 minutes, and she's like, this is terrible. And I was How
long was the first miniseries? Was it 8 hours?
I feel like it was 4 2-hour movies.
4 nights. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was awesome that they used Don't Fear the Reaper as the intro to that, because that was kind of perfect. But the entirety of the plague happening kind of happened in the opening credits, and I hope they don't do that.
No, I hope so too.
God, they better not do that. Although I remember now, like they showed Larry like driving in his car, you know. That's the other thing that I'm curious about, because in the book, the character Larry has a hit song called Baby Can You Dig Your Man. And the lyrics are constantly read, but they don't really ever tell you what the type of song it is. You don't know if it's a soul song or a blues song or a rock and roll song. And then so in your mind, you kind of have to like make up what the song is. And then in the miniseries, they actually gave you the song. Like there was a version of the song, like Larry's driving,
listening to it
as he's driving into Manhattan. And it was not good. I'm hoping, if they do the 20-somethings version of an African-American guy's like kind of hip hop urban, I'm expecting the song to be much better this time around. I'm expecting it to be much better, because the white Larry's version was not. It wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. All right, Dan, is there anything else you want to throw in here before we wrap it up and go off our merry way to watch this damn series starting next week?
We got it covered. Just remember that Metallica got the name for Ride the Lightning from The Stand. That's a piece of trivia. In one of the things, that's where they got the name for the album, because it's mentioned in the book.
Was that from when Lloyd was supposed to get the electric chair?
Yeah, somebody says he's going to ride the lightning. So there you go.
I mean, how many 80s thrash songs and albums can be attributed to Stephen King stuff? A lot.
Yeah. A lot. Yeah, man. I don't know. I think this is good. Let's see what happens, and fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Me and Dan are recording this right now in the last week of November, and then
we've seen nothing.
In December, the show starts. We're going to watch it all the way through. So the next time you see us will be February, but you will get both episodes in the same week. So you're going to listen to this like on a Wednesday and on a Friday. And and 4 months will have passed in between that with the recording of these episodes. So we are going to look totally different, and it's going to be funny watching them come together.
Maybe we'll get haircuts.
Dan, I think Dan has a Dungeons and Dragons game to go play right now, so I'm going to let Dan go.
All right, man, I'll talk to you later.
Is that a family thing or is that a friends thing?
It's my friends from high school. How about that?
Oh, nice. You play like on Zoom?
It's like Zoom. There's all these like software programs now or online programs. That's, so it's like D&D Beyond. It's really come a long way.
Wow. That sounds awesome.
It's pretty fun. It's pretty nerdy. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, there was a time when being a nerdy D&D person was totally not cool nerdy. And now it's like it's like socially acceptable nerdery. Right. Now, which is great. And that goes back to the Harold Lauder thing. Totally different time, totally different type of nerdery.
He might be a cool guy in the show.
Yeah, I'm guessing no. All right, man. I'm going to let you go. And I'll talk to you again soon.
All right, later.
Later.